Did you see that? Poor girl, how embarrassing.
My Korean Mafia boss broke every woman who tried. He never expected me. The night a woman in diamonds poured red wine over my Waitress uniform in front of the most feared Korean Mafia boss in the city, she thought she had buried me. She had no idea. I was the hidden owner of the very company her father stole from my family. My name is Zaria Vale. At least that was the name on my apron. At Velvet Crane, I was just the black waitress with steady hands, soft shoes, and a quiet voice. I carried plates, cleared crystal glasses, and smiled through insults because powerful people stop watching The Help after the first 5 seconds. That was why I took the job. Rich people don't hide the truth from women they think are beneath them, and the richest liar in the room was Selene Carrington. She loved cameras, expensive champagne, and men she thought she could wear like jewelry. That night, she walked into Velvet Crane in a silver dress that clung to her like money. On her arm was the man half the city feared and the other half wanted dead, Kang Tae-joon, the Korean mafia boss no woman had ever been able to control. I had heard every story. A model who tried to use him for fame ended up crying on live TV after he exposed her fake charity scam. A socialite who pretended to be pregnant to trap him vanished from the city after he leaked her wire transfers to a rival family. A billionaire's daughter tried to force an engagement for a shipping alliance. Tae-joon broke that deal in one afternoon and sent her father into bankruptcy 2 months later. That was his pattern. He broke every woman who tried, coldly, cleanly, publicly. So when he looked at me that first night, I understood one thing very clearly. Danger had just noticed me back. I carried a bottle of red wine to table 1. Selene looked me up and down like I was a stain before I even got close. "Careful," she said loudly. "That bottle probably costs more than her whole apartment." Her friends laughed. I kept pouring. Then she smiled. That smile was the first warning. "You know," she said, tilting her head, "you look familiar." I kept my face calm. "I get that a lot, Mom." "No," she said slowly. "Not familiar." Disappointing. My grip tightened on the bottle. Across from her, Tae-joon said nothing. He just watched me with those dark, unreadable eyes that made grown men lower their voices. Then Selene reached up, caught my wrist, and tipped the bottle. Red wine spilled down my white shirt and black apron. The whole room froze. She leaned back in her chair, smiling like she had done something funny. "Oh no," she said. "What a shame." My face burned. But I did not cry, I did not argue. I looked straight at her and said, "Is that all?" Her smile slipped. "Just a little." And that tiny crack was the first sign that my comeback had already started. When I walked into the service hallway, every nerve in my body felt hot. Not from the wine, from the memory. Because 5 years earlier, Selene Carrington had smiled at me the exact same way in a different room, in front of different people, while my whole life was being stripped from me. Back then, I was not a waitress. I was Zaria Vale Carrington, daughter of Ariana Vale, founder of Vale Meridian Infrastructure, one of the largest private logistics and construction firms on the East Coast. My mother built ports, warehouses, bridge systems, and secure transport routes. Then she married the wrong man, Gideon Carrington, Selene's father. He came in polished, patient, and charming. He called my mother brilliant. He called me family. He called our company ours before it ever was. Then my mother got sick. That was when the betrayal started. By the time she died, Gideon had moved his people into our boardroom, changed voting terms behind closed doors, and started whispering to investors that I was too emotional, too reckless, too young, too unstable to lead. Selene helped him. She leaked old photos of me crying after my mother's funeral. She told gossip pages I had a drinking problem. She called me fragile in interviews. Then came the public humiliation I never forgot. At a shareholder dinner, Gideon announced he would serve as acting chairman for the good of the company. And Selene stood beside him in white silk, smiling at the cameras like I was a sad family problem everyone had outgrown. I still hear the exact words she said. Nia needs peace. Leadership is heavy, and not everyone is built for it. That was the face slap. Not with a hand, with an audience, with a smile. I walked out that night with one suitcase, one lawyer, and one promise to myself. I would not fight them too early. I would not scream while they were ready. I would disappear, gather proof, and come back when their greed made them sloppy. So I changed my name. I worked quiet jobs. I let the city believe I had fallen. Then I took the waitress job at Velvet Crane because Gideon, Selene, and every shark circling them loved closing dirty deals over imported whiskey and seafood towers. I served them. I listened, I remembered. People think revenge is rage. They are wrong. Real revenge is patience with paperwork. And I had 5 years of it. After the wine incident, I expected Tae-joon to forget me. Men like him did not chase women in aprons. They bought penthouses for women in silk dresses and left bodyguards outside their doors. But the next afternoon he came back, alone. No Selene. No crowd. Just him in a black suit, a steel watch and a neck tattoo peeking above his collar like a warning. The hostess led him to table 6 by the windows. Then she turned and whispered, "He asked for you." I should have refused. I should have switched sections. Instead, I picked up my order pad and walked over. "What can I get you?" I asked. He did not open the menu. "You changed your shirt." I blinked. "Yes, the red looked better on you. That should have annoyed me." Instead, my heart gave one stupid, sharp beat. "I serve food here," I said, "not opinions." His mouth moved, almost a smile. "Black cod," he said. "Ginger rice, no scallions. You already know what you want." I knew yesterday. I wrote it down anyway. When I turned to leave, he said, "Selene won't touch you again." I looked back at him. "That sounds like a promise." "It is. I didn't ask you to defend me." "No," he said. "You looked like the kind of woman who would rather bleed than be rescued." That stopped me. He said it so calmly, not mocking, just certain. "And what kind of man does that make you?" I asked. His eyes held mine. "The kind who notices blood." I walked away before my face gave me away. That should have been the end of it. But for the next 10 days, Tae-joon came back at the same hour, sometimes for lunch, sometimes for late dinner, always asking for my section, always watching more than he spoke. The kitchen staff started whispering. The servers started teasing. Tasha, the bartender, leaned into me one night and said, "Girl, if you don't want that man, send him to me." "You can have him," she laughed. "Liar. I am not interested in mafia bosses." "You say that," she said, drying a glass, "but he looks at you, like he's studying a locked vault." That bothered me because it was true. Tae-joon did not look at me like a man starved for attention. He looked at me like a man trying to solve a puzzle that refused to open itself. And the worst part? A small part of me liked being the one thing he could not read. By the second week, Selene noticed. Of course she did. Women like her do not fear other women until a powerful man starts looking their way. That Friday night, Velvet Crane hosted a private pre-auction dinner for investors, politicians, and anyone rich enough to pretend the world belonged to them. Selene arrived wearing gold. Tae-joon arrived 5 minutes later in black. The room shifted when he walked in. Even men who hated him respected what fear had built around him. Selene touched his arm like she owned it. That was when I understood the real game. She was trying to secure him. Not because she loved him, because her father needed his port network for a private shipping expansion. Tae-joon was not a boyfriend. He was leverage. And Selene never touched anything unless she thought it could raise her status. When I brought their drinks, she smiled too sweetly. "Still here?" she asked. "I work here," I said. Temporary things always say that. I set the glasses down. Tae-joon's eyes moved from her face to mine. Selene noticed that too. Bad mistake. Half an hour later, the head server rushed into the back. "Zaria, table 1 wants the cognac service." My stomach tightened. That was not my station, but I knew a setup when I saw one. I took the tray anyway. The dining room glowed with warm light, soft jazz, and expensive lies. I reached the table and poured for one man, then another. When I got to Selene, she tapped her nail against the crystal. "Tell me something," she said loudly. "Do they teach girls like you to stare at taken men? Or does it come naturally?" The room got quiet. I kept pouring. "I wouldn't know," I said. "I don't chase what looks expensive." A few people coughed to hide their laughter. Selene's face changed. There it was, the real her. Ugly because she was used to being the center of every room. She stood, snatched the glass from my tray, and threw the cognac across my chest. Gasps, phones lifting, eyes widening, public humiliation again. "You insolent little waitress," she snapped. "Learn your place." The liquid soaked my shirt. My skin burned. But I looked right at her and said, "You first." The silence after that was beautiful. Then a chair scraped the floor. Tae-joon stood up, not fast, not loud, but the room felt colder. He looked at Selene once, just once, and she took a full step back. "Sit down," he said. She swallowed Tae-joon. I said, "Sit down." The whole room watched. I should have walked away. Instead, I held his gaze for one dangerous second too long. That was when I knew this story had moved past my control. If you were me, would you have slapped Selene back or walked away and planned your revenge? Comment, slap her, or plan revenge. I finished my shift in a dry uniform borrowed from the laundry room. At midnight, when I stepped out into the alley behind Velvet Crane, a black car was waiting. Tae-joon stood beside it. The street lamp threw hard light across his jaw. 2 guards waited near the curb. "I'm not getting in," I said. "I didn't ask you to. Then why are you here?" "To tell you Selene will not bother you again." I laughed once. "You really think women like Selene stop because a man says so?" "No," he said. "They stop when consequences scare them more than ambition." I folded my arms. "And what are those consequences?" His face did not change. "She lost the port meeting she wanted tonight." My brows lifted. She wanted a meeting. She wanted my signature. Instead, she got my silence. That was worse. For a woman like Selene, public access to a powerful man was social currency. He had just taken it away in front of witnesses. "You did that because of me?" I asked. "I did it because I don't reward disrespect." Something about that answer settled inside me. Not warm, not safe, just steady. Then he looked at me more closely. "Who are you really?" "Zaria Vale. That's the apron." I went still. He stepped closer, though not enough to crowd me. "Your posture is wrong," he said. "Your hands are wrong. You watch rooms like a person who used to own them." That hit harder than I expected. "You should mind your business." "I am," he said. "You're standing in it." Before I could answer, one of his guards moved sharply. "Boss," Tae-joon turned. A grey SUV idled at the corner. Its lights were off. My pulse kicked. I had seen that SUV twice before near my apartment. Tae-joon's voice changed. Colder now. "Get her inside." I said I'm not. And the SUV door opened and a man stepped out with a phone aimed at me. Flash. Another flash. Tae-joon moved in front of me without asking. His guard crossed the street. The man cursed and jumped back into the SUV. Tires screamed. The vehicle tore off into traffic. I stared after it. Tae-joon looked down at me. "Still think you're not being hunted?" I swallowed. "They're just trying to scare me. That means it's working." His voice softened by 1 degree. "Come with me." I hesitated. Every instinct told me no, but every instinct also told me the game had changed. So I got in the car. Only for one ride, I told myself. Only to stay ahead. That was the lie I used. The truth was simpler. For the first time in years, I wanted to know what it felt like to stop surviving alone. He did not take me to a penthouse. He took me to a private office above one of his riverside clubs. Floor-to-ceiling windows, black leather chairs, a long table covered with shipping maps and contract folders, no personal photos, no softness. It looked exactly how I imagined a man like Kang Tae-joon would live. Like affection had never been allowed in the room. He handed me a towel for my damp hair and a clean black shirt from some emergency closet. I stared at it. "You keep women's clothes in your office?" "One of my guards is your size." That made me laugh. A real laugh. He looked at me like he had won something small. I changed in the restroom and came back out. He was standing by the window, one hand in his pocket. "Sit," he said. I stayed standing. "Ask your question." He turned. "You know me well enough to know I have one. I know you well enough to know you have 10. His mouth shifted again. Almost that smile. "Fine. Who is Selene's people? Maybe her father's. Why? Because I know things they don't want known." "What things?" I crossed my arms. He waited. That was one thing about Tae-joon. He never filled silence just because it made others nervous. Finally I said, 5 years ago, my mother's company was stolen from me. His eyes sharpened. By Selene's father. Yes. What company? I looked straight at him. Val Meridian Infrastructure. His entire expression changed. Not shock, recognition. You're near, Val. There was no point pretending anymore. Yes, he nodded slowly. The missing heiress. I was never missing. I was collecting proof. That earned me a different look. Respect. I hated how much I wanted it from him. He turned, grabbed a folder, and tossed it onto the table. I opened it. Inside was a draft shipping agreement between Carrington Holdings and one of Tae-joon's private port networks. Under infrastructure partners, there it was. Vale Meridian Logistics Division, my mother's company, used without my consent. My head snapped up. Where did you get this? Selene brought it to me 2 weeks ago. She thought a dinner dress and a smile would close the deal. And I don't sign contracts with thieves. The room went quiet. Then he said the thing that made the title real. Every woman who tried to use me thought beauty was leverage. It never was. Lies are easy to break. I looked at him carefully. And what about women who don't lie? His gaze locked on mine. I wouldn't know, he said. I haven't met one until now. That should have sounded like a line. From him, it sounded like a confession he didn't mean to say out loud. The next morning, everything exploded. Someone leaked the restaurant footage. Not the whole thing. Only the part where Selene threw cognac on me, and I said, "You first." The internet ate it alive. Clips spread across gossip pages with captions like, "Mystery waitress humiliated at elite dinner. Who is the woman Kang Tae-joon defended? Secrets at Velvet Crane." By noon, another story hit. Is waitress Zaria Vale actually missing Heiress Nia Vale? That came from Selene. I knew, because only someone close to the old story would know where to aim. Velvet Crane suspended me before lunch. The manager wouldn't even look at me. "It's just until things cool down," he said. "Of course," I answered. Fear always sounded polite in expensive places. When I got to my apartment, the front door was open. My body went cold. I moved inside slowly. The lamp had been knocked over. My drawers were open. Papers were everywhere. Someone had been searching, not for cash, for evidence. I went straight to the loose floorboard under my bed. Empty. My breath stopped. The backup drive with 3 years of copied contracts, transfer slips, and internal board notes was gone. For 1 full second, I could not breathe. Then my phone rang. Selene. I answered on the 3rd ring. Her voice came sweet and poisonous. "You should have stayed a waitress." I gripped the phone so hard my hand hurt. "Break into my apartment now? That's desperate." "Oh, honey, this is still the warm-up. Gideon said to tell you one thing. If you go public, you'll lose harder than last time." I forced myself calm. "You sound nervous," she laughed. "You are a suspended waitress with no proof and no reputation. I'm the face of Carrington Holdings. Which one of us should be nervous?" Then the line went dead. I stood in the middle of my wrecked apartment, shaking with rage. This was the lowest point. The point where weaker people made noise. The point where people without strategy ran straight into traps. I did neither. I called only 2 people, my lawyer and Tae-joon. He answered on the 1st ring. "What happened?" Selene took the backup drive. Silence. Then the coldest voice I had heard from him yet. "Stay where you are." Within 20 minutes, he was in my apartment. Black coat, hard eyes, 2 guards behind him. He looked around once and said, "No one touches what's mine." I looked at him sharply. "I'm not yours," his gaze met mine. "No," he said quietly, "but your safety is." That should not have settled me. It did. My lawyer, Marlon Graves, arrived an hour later with a legal file and enough anger for all 3 of us. Marlon had been my mother's outside counsel for 20 years. He wore old suits, trusted paper more than people, and had never once told me to calm down. He listened to everything, then nodded. "Good." I stared at him. "Good?" When frightened people steal evidence, they reveal what matters most. Tae-joon leaned against the kitchen counter, arms folded. Marlon continued. "If they took the drive, they think it was your only copy." I looked at him, then smiled slowly. "It wasn't." He nodded back. "Of course it wasn't." Selene had stolen the backup. Not the master file. That one sat inside a secure legal archive under Marlon's name, locked away 4 years earlier. And Gideon did not know that because arrogance had made him lazy. Tae-joon looked between us. "You both smile like criminals." We're lawyers without the billing problem, Marlon said. I finally laughed. Then Marlon placed a document on the table. This is the bigger issue. It was a board notice. Vale Meridian Extraordinary Shareholder Review. 48 hours. My pulse jumped. He's accelerating. Yes, Marlon said. Gideon wants emergency approval for a merger structure before the leak spreads. If he gets it, he can bury the old transfer trail under a new holding company. I looked up. Can we stop it? Marlon smiled without humour. We can destroy it. Tae-joon stepped closer to the table. What do you need from me? Marlon tapped the fake port contract. Confirmation that Carrington Holdings used Vale Meridian assets without rightful authorization. On record. Tae-joon's eyes went to me. This will make enemies. I gave him a hard look. Do you scare easily? No, he said. Do you? No. That was answer enough. By midnight, we had a plan. I would walk into the shareholder review as Nia Vale, rightful heir and minority owner. Marlon would present the trust papers, my mother's original voting protections, and the frozen transfers. Tae-joon would testify that Gideon and Selene tried to use Vale Meridian assets to secure a private port deal they had no right to negotiate. And if Gideon tried to call me unstable again, I would look him in the eye and remind him unstable women do not build cases for 5 years. Before he'd left, Tae-joon paused by the doorway. Tomorrow gets ugly, he said. It already is. He nodded once, then his voice dropped. When it does, don't look for rescue, I frowned. I wasn't planning to. Good, he said. Look for me standing behind your victory. That line followed me long after he was gone. I walked into Vale Meridian headquarters wearing white, not soft white, war white, the kind that makes a room remember your name before you speak it. The building still smelled like polished stone and false loyalty. 5 years ago, I had left through the front doors in tears while cameras waited outside. This time I stepped through them with my head high, Marlon at my side, and every reason in the world to stay calm. The receptionist saw me and froze. Then the whispering started. By the time the elevator opened on the top floor, half the building knew. The missing heiress was back. The boardroom doors swung open. Gideon stood at the far end of the table, silver hair perfect, expression practiced. Selene sat on his right in cream silk and diamonds, but the moment she saw me, the colour drained from her face. The room went dead quiet. I took one seat from the head of the table, not at the end, not like a guest, like I belonged there. Gideon recovered first. Nia, he said warmly, this is unexpected. No, I said, this is overdue. Marlon placed 3 thick binders on the table. Board members shifted. Selene crossed her legs and forced his mind. You disappear for years, then show up during a merger vote, she asked. That doesn't look suspicious at all. I looked at her. You broke into my apartment yesterday. Let's not pretend we both care about appearances. A few board members stiffened. Good. Let them feel the floor move. Gideon gave a tired sigh. You've always been emotional. That old line, that old insult. 5 years ago it would have cut deeper. Now it sounded cheap. No, I said calmly. I've always been inconvenient. Then Marlon began. He laid out my mother's original trust, the protected voting rights, the internal memos Gideon hid, the false emergency resolutions, the private transfers routed through 3 shell companies. One by one, the room changed. Interest, then discomfort, then fear. Selene finally snapped. She has no real proof these signatures were forged. I nodded to Marlon. He slid over the handwriting analysis and email chain. Then I added, and if that isn't enough, we can discuss why Carrington Holdings used Vale Meridian assets in a private negotiation with Tae-joon. That turned every head in the room. Gideon's mask slipped. Just for a second, enough. The doors opened. Tae-joon walked in, black suit, black tie, 2 guards behind him. Silence fell so hard it felt physical. He took the empty chair near the wall. I was invited, he said. No one challenged him. Not one person. Tae-joon did not raise his voice. He never needed to. He looked at Gideon once and said, You brought me a contract using infrastructure and secured transport rights that did not belong to you. Gideon forced a smile. There may have been confusion. No, Tae-joon said. There was fraud. The word landed like a hammer. Selene tried to recover. My father acted in good faith. Tae-joon looked at her. For the first time, I saw actual disgust in his face. You don't know what good faith looks like. She swallowed. He continued. You tried to use a relationship to force a signature. That line hit even harder, because everyone in the room understood what he meant. Selene had used romance as business leverage and failed. Hard. She lifted her chin. That is not true. Tae-joon slid a folder across the table. Inside were her messages, dinner plans tied to contract drafts, her assistant's emails to his office, a private note offering personal flexibility, exchange for faster approval. The board members read in silence. Then one older director muttered, "This is a disaster." No, it was justice, and it was beautiful. But Gideon still had one move left. He stood, looked around the table and said, even if there were procedural mistakes, the company still needs stable leadership. Nia disappeared. She worked as a waitress. She has no credibility to run an enterprise of this size. There it was. Class shame, public humiliation, his favourite weapon. So I leaned forward and gave him the truth. I worked as a waitress because honest work fed me while you stole from a dead woman's company. The room went still. I kept going. You call it shame because you think service makes a person small. It doesn't. Theft does. Lies do. Hiding behind polished speeches does. Selene cut in, voice sharp. You're still not fit to lead, I looked at her, and yet here I am, still standing, still sober, still prepared, still holding more truth than you can afford. Then Marlon revealed the final piece. My mother had left a sealed succession clause that activated if voting rights were unlawfully altered. A shocking twist. The moment fraud was proven, Gideon's acting authority became automatically void. The room changed all at once. He was not chairman anymore. Not legally. Not even for one more minute. Selene's lips parted. Gideon turned pale. I sat back and said the line I had carried for 5 years. You used my silence as weakness. That was your biggest mistake. When I took my seat and exposed the forged transfers, was that the ultimate power reversal or what? Comment power reversal if you felt that moment. The board called an emergency recess. That was when Gideon panicked. I knew because panic always makes arrogant men sloppy. While board members huddled with counsel, Gideon pulled 2 directors into a side room and tried to save himself with promises of future equity. Selene worked the hallway, whispering that I was unstable, reckless, emotional, vindictive. None of it landed the same way anymore. That's the thing about a comeback. Once truth walks into the room, old lies start sounding tired. Then Tasha called me. You need to see this. She sent a link. Selene had already gone online. A live interview. Fast makeup, fake tears, soft voice, classic. I feel sorry for Nia, she was saying. She's been obsessed with my family for years. We tried to help her heal. Instead, she attached herself to a dangerous man. Attached herself. There it was. The oldest insult in the book. Reduce the woman. Blame the woman. Make her success look borrowed. I almost laughed. Then the camera caught something else. On the side table behind Selene sat the external drive, stolen from my apartment. My eyes sharpened. She really thought she could wave my own evidence in front of the world like a trophy. I sent the screenshot to Marlon. 2 minutes later, he smiled. Perfect. Perfect. She just confirmed possession of stolen material on a live broadcast. The police can pick it up with the warrant. I stared at him. Then I started laughing. Not because it was funny. Because Selene had finally become careless enough to beat herself. That was karma. Not magic. Not luck. Just arrogance reaching its expiration date. At the end of recess, the board re-entered. The vote happened fast. Too fast for Gideon to recover. His authority was suspended pending criminal review. Selene was removed from all advisory duties effective immediately. My shares were restored pending final certification. And I was appointed interim executive chair until the special review closed. Interim. Temporary. But it was enough. Because the company I had been told I was too weak to lead had just been handed back into my control. When the meeting ended, Gideon stood across from me with a face full of old poison. You think this means you've won? I looked right at him. No, I said. I think it means I finally started collecting. That night should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like war had finally introduced itself. As I left Vale Meridian with Marlon, a motorcycle cut across the garage entrance. Then another. 2 black SUVs rolled in behind them. My body went tight, Marlon cursed. That's not security. No, it wasn't. It was one of Gideon's outsourced intimidation crews. Not legal. Not clean. Just pressure in expensive shoes. Before I could move, another set of headlights flooded the garage. 3 black cars, Tae-joon's. His men got out first, so shouting, no chaos, just controlled force. The intimidation crew saw who it was and immediately lost their appetite for drama. That was Tae-joon's real power. He did not need to throw punches when his name already did the work. The lead man raised both hands. Wrong place, wrong time. Tae-joon stepped out of the center car. Wrong city, he said. The men backed off fast. Within seconds, they were gone. Marlon let out a breath. I'm too old for this. Tae-joon walked toward me. You okay? Yes, that was automatic. He looked at me like he knew it was only half true. Come with me. This time I didn't argue. He took me to the top floor of a private hotel he owned on the river. The suite was quiet, dark, and far too beautiful for the kind of night I'd had. City lights reflected in the glass. The whole skyline looked like a kingdom trying to pretend it was civilized. I stood by the window and let the silence settle. Then I said the truth. I was scared in that garage. He came to stand beside me. So was I. I turned. You? Yes, that doesn't make sense. He looked out at the river. You think fear leaves powerful men alone? It doesn't. We just get better suits. That line broke something open in me. Maybe because it was honest. Maybe because I was tired. Maybe because for once, someone strong was not pretending strength meant numbness. I looked at him. Why me? He turned to face me fully. Because you never wanted anything from me. That can't be the only reason. No, he said quietly. It isn't. He took one step closer. You walked into rooms built to crush you and refused to bow. You got humiliated in public and still kept your dignity. You were betrayed, pushed down, erased, and you still came back with your own name in your mouth. I know what dangerous looks like, Nia. You don't wear it like a weapon. You wear it like grace. My throat tightened. Nobody had ever spoken to me like that. Not because I was beautiful, not because I was useful, because I was strong. I should have stepped back. I didn't. His hand lifted slowly, giving me time to refuse. When his fingers touched my jaw, the room felt smaller. I break women who try to use me, he said. I don't touch women I respect unless they ask me to. So I asked, not with words, with the way I leaned in, with the way I stopped running. And when he kissed me, it felt less like surrender, and more like choosing someone after surviving alone too long. The final blow came 3 days later at the Vale Meridian Renewal Gala. It was supposed to mark a new beginning. Investors, press, board members, a public statement about ethics reforms, restored voting power, and a fresh leadership structure. I wore black that night. Not mourning black, victory black. Tae-joon arrived beside me in a sharp, dark suit that made the city's richest men look decorative. The cameras loved us. The internet loved us more. That made Selene desperate, which meant she showed up, not invited, not welcome, but desperate women do not ask permission. I was halfway through my speech when the screens behind me flickered. My prepared presentation vanished. A video appeared instead. Old clips of me at Velvet Crane, photos of me leaving Tae-joon's hotel. Tabloid headlines calling me a climber, a gold digger, a fallen heiress, a waitress who slept her way back into power. Then big red letters filled the screen. She lied. She seduced. She stole. Gasps filled the ballroom. Selene walked out from the side aisle in white satin, microphone in hand, eyes wild with borrowed confidence. There she is, she said. The little waitress with the big secret identity. The room went still. I looked at her and felt nothing. No fear. No panic. No urge to explain. That was growth. That was the glow up. You know you've healed when your old bully sounds smaller than your memory made them. Selene lifted the microphone. This woman used Kang Tae-joon to take Vale Meridian. She played poor, played innocent, and seduced her way into a power reversal she never earned. I glanced toward the AV booth. Marlon gave the smallest nod. Good. Let her finish digging. Selene turned to the crowd. Ask yourselves why a Korean mafia boss suddenly chose a waitress. Ask yourselves what she gave him. The room buzzed. Tae-joon moved slightly, but I lifted one finger. No, this one was mine. I stepped away from the podium and walked to center stage. Then I held out my hand. Give me the mic, Selene, she laughed. Why? So you can cry? No, I said, so I can end this. For one foolish second, she actually handed it to me. I faced the room, then I nodded toward the screen. Play the full file. The image changed. Now the room saw the unedited version. Selene's assistant paying the gossip blogs. Her messages ordering the apartment break-in. Her live interview with the stolen drive in the background. The metadata stamps. The contract messages to Tae-joon. The attempted seduction tied to illegal port access. Then the final clip hit. Selene on audio saying, "Make her look unstable again. If she cries, we win." The room turned cold. Selene's face drained completely. I looked at her and gave her the same gift she had given me years ago. An audience. "This is the part where you realize the world can hear you," I said. Then Marlon stepped onto stage with 2 federal investigators. That was the payoff. Not loud, not messy, clean permanent. Selene backed up. "No, this is insane. Nia, tell them I looked right at her. You poured on the shame. I brought receipts." She shook her head wildly. "This can't be happening." I gave her the final line she had earned. "No, Selene. This is what happening looks like, after years of you thinking. There would never be consequences." The investigators escorted her out while cameras flashed like lightning. No one followed her. No one defended her. The room had already chosen. And this time it chose the truth. When I said, "You poured on the shame, I brought receipts," did that hit hard enough? Comment she won, if you felt that payoff. By morning, the whole city had turned. Every outlet ran some version of the same story. Hidden identity reveal shocks business world. Waitress turns out to be. True Heir karma hits Carrington family. Power reversal leaves Selene. Exposed she. Walked away with everything that last one made me laugh. Not because it was wrong, because they finally understood. I had walked away with everything important, long before the headlines caught up. My patience, my dignity, my strategy, my mother's lessons. And now I had the company too. Within a week, Gideon was under criminal review. Selene lost every board seat she held through him. Vale Meridian announced employee restitution, external auditing, and full contract review. People called it revenge. Some called it a comeback. Some called it a face slap. Some called it the most satisfying public humiliation they had ever watched unfold. I called it correction, because revenge alone is empty if it doesn't restore what was broken. I stood in my mother's old office after midnight, the skyline glowing outside, and let myself feel it for the first time. Not triumph. Peace! Tae-joon walked in without knocking. Only he could do that and not ruin the moment. "You're smiling," he said. "So are you. Less than you." I leaned against the desk. "You know what's funny?" "What?" "For years, they called me unstable because I cried after my mother died. But the whole time, I was the most patient person in the room." He nodded. "Weak people call patience weakness because they don't have any." I smiled. Then I walked toward him. "You stood behind my victory," I said. "I told you I would. You'd never tried to own me." "No." "Why?" His eyes held mine. "Because I wanted you free enough to choose me." That one went deep. Too deep. Maybe because it was exactly what I had needed all along. Not rescue. Not pressure. A choice. So I kissed him first. And for a man known for breaking women who tried to use him, Tae-joon kissed me, like I was the first thing he ever wanted to protect without crushing. 6 months later, I bought Velvet Crane. Not out of spite, though I won't lie. The symbolism was delicious. I bought it because places remember. And I wanted the place where I was humiliated to become. The place where women working for tips never had to swallow disrespect again. On reopening night, the whole staff lined up by the front bar. Some were nervous. Some were excited. My old manager looked like he had aged 10 years. I stood in the center of the dining room, the chandeliers glowing above me, and said, "From tonight on, no employee in this building will be humiliated for a paycheck. I don't care how rich a guest is. If they insult my staff, they leave." The room broke into applause. Tasha, now my operations director, grinned like she had been waiting to hear those words her whole life. I turned toward table 6 by the windows. Tae-joon was already there. Of course he was. Black suit, calm face, the same dangerous eyes that had first noticed me when I was carrying trays and hiding my name. I walked over myself. "What can I get you?" I asked. He looked up at me, and this time there was no mystery between us. "What you served me the first day," he said. "Black cod, ginger rice, no scallions. You remember. I remember everything." His hand reached into his jacket. He slid a folded note across the table. I opened it. "You were never the woman they buried. You were the storm they delayed." I looked at him and smiled. Outside, cameras flashed through the windows. People still loved the story. The black waitress, the Korean Mafia boss, the betrayal, the revenge, the hidden identity reveal, the shocking twist, the power reversal, the woman who came back stronger, the woman who won. But the real lesson was simpler than the headlines. Never let public humiliation talk you out of your private power. Never confuse a season of survival with a lifetime of weakness. And never rush your counterattack just because pain wants an audience. Sometimes karma is not fast. Sometimes revenge is not loud. Sometimes your biggest glow-up begins the day you stop begging people to see your worth and quietly build a life that forces them to. I looked around the room one last time. The same room where wine had once run down my uniform while rich people watched. Now it belonged to me. The company belonged to me. My name belonged to me. My peace belonged to me. And the man people feared most in the city. He looked at me like I was the one thing power had never been able to buy. I lifted my glass. "To every woman they thought they broke," I said. Tae-joon lifted his glass too. And to the one I never expected, I smiled, clinked his glass, and held his gaze. Because in the end, I did not win by becoming cruel. I won by becoming impossible to erase. And that is the moral lesson no one who betrays you ever wants to learn. The woman you humiliate today may be the same woman standing over your downfall tomorrow. Calm, prepared, and completely out of your reach.